Welcome. This podcast is an exploration into being human and what's possible when there's less attention on the noise in our heads. Warning. While listening to this broadcast, you may experience moments of deep peace, sighs of relief, personal insights, or long stretches of dead air. Do not be afraid. This is normal. Under the Noise with Win Morgan and Kate Roberts. Hello. Today we have a guest with us today called Lorna Davis. And I've known Lorna now for, I think, 3 years. And Lorna will, give a quick intro in a second, but here's something I've noticed personally about Lorna in that time. From having known her as someone who had a very successful, highly successful career and did amazing things at work, to then be drawn more into what was more heartfelt and purposeful for her, and then to take a deeper dive into human nature over the last couple of years anyway, since I got to know her quite well, really well in the last few years. And I think you're going to love hearing from her. So hi, Lorna.
Hey, Win.
So this is
Hi, Lorna.
Hey, Kate.
Kate Roberts and Win Morgan Under the Noise with Lorna Davis. So Lorna, what would you love people who don't know anything about you to know something about you?
I guess I'd like them to know that after a lifetime of trying to fix myself and my circumstances, that I now see that I was perfect all along, and that my life is completely created from the inside out, and that it's designed to be perfect. And it seems so simple, and that's really how it works.
And if I didn't know you, and Kate didn't know you and didn't know what all of that meant, how would you describe what life works from the inside out actually means?
So what I've noticed with other people, and I certainly noticed it in myself, is that there are parts of my life and everybody's life that have always operated effortlessly. So, for example, my body's been a really reliable friend that I don't understand at all. I have no clue how my heart is beating right now and how my lungs are working. Truly miraculous. And I have taken this miracle for granted and allowed it to be what it is. And then in other parts of my life, I have decided that I need to kind of work it out, figure it out, fix it, change it, work at it. And I've spent a lifetime. I'm 61 years old. I was the leader, CEO, managing director, whatever you want to call it, of big businesses for 20 years. And I genuinely thought that my well-being depended on my being able to be richer, more powerful, more successful, more thinner, more caring, more. Bless me. I really did think that was how it worked. And now I see that it all works the way that it has always worked in other parts of my life that I haven't even really noticed. So the wisdom that is flowing through my body is flowing through everything in my existence. And maybe the most powerful phrase that's sort of settling in me today is that I have slowed down to the speed of life. I used to be so fast because I was constantly trying to fix, trying to do, trying to act on the world. And now I just notice that life has its wisdom, and that what it has in store for me, I don't know, and I don't need to know. And so that's what I call working from the inside out. And what I've noticed more and more, and it's deepening in me all of the time, thanks to you and to other people in this conversation, is that every time that I am not calm, in love, peaceful, comfortable, settled, all that means is that I'm overthinking. Nothing more, nothing less. That's it. And there's nothing to be done. Just notice, no matter how tempting some of those thoughts are to kind of suck me in, nothing to be done. And, you know, when I speak about it, I cry, I don't know how many times a day now, not cry like this kind of little bit of like, I get moved, because it's so simple and it's so extraordinary. And this morning I was just talking to my boyfriend who wasn't feeling great. And I just looked at him and thought and said, if you could see how amazing you are, I can't think of anything I can say that shows you how amazing you are, irrespective of the fact that I happen to be in a relationship with him. He is a magnificent human. And when I see that in him, it's so beautiful to me. And when I look at you two now, in this moment, it's so beautiful. And it's so simple. And we get caught up and we come back, and we get caught up and we come back. But that's how I experience it now. So that's a long answer to your question of what does inside out mean to me, but that's what it means right now.
How do you account for the change? For the change, or what must you have seen in order for you to have seen the truth in what you've just said?
This is a great question, Win, because it looks different to me all the time now. So how it used to look to me is I had a series of algebraic equations in my head that said, if this, then that. And the list, I already gave you some of the list, but the list was long, right? If I were thin enough, blonde enough, had the right man, had the right house, had the right. And I've moved internationally 12 times. So I've tried a lot of countries. I've been married twice. I have been a lot of different weights. I've been a lot of different hair colors. And I have, at this moment, quite a lot of money in my bank accounts. I got to a point where even an idiot could see that this algebraic equation wasn't going to work, because I had tried so many things. And there was no there. And so at some point that reality sank into me, or that kind of conclusion sank into me. And then I started to look somewhere else. And by the way, you know, in parallel to all of that was decades of therapy, self-help groups, because if all of those outside things weren't working, then I needed to fix the stuff inside me that I decided was broken. And I have entertained more therapists in my life about the very complicated story of my childhood and my sexual abuse and my painful background here and there and there and there. And so that wasn't working either. Like, I'd kind of processed how much more could a human process? And so when I heard a podcast by Michael Neal, and he talked about trains of thought. And he said, if you are feeling bad, all that means is that you are on a train of thought that is taking you somewhere unhelpful. And all you need to do is get off the train and on the platform and wait for another thought, because that's where trains of thought come from. And there was something in that sentence that just landed in me, because I could see the transitory nature of thought. I could see at some level that things that I thought were solid were fluid. There was something in that kind of started to dissolve it. That was maybe four years ago, 2017. And I had just moved to the US, and I was running the North American Dannon business, which is a $6 billion business. And I was like, this was yet another big prize, you know? And so that exploration, you know, set me off in a way down the track that I am on today. But in retrospect, now I see the wisdom in all of it. I mean, wisdom was working all the way through all of those things. And I was incredibly wise and insightful in the midst of some of my other more complicated thinking all the way through. And these days I notice, like, I will meet somebody, or I will, you know, somebody will reach out to me on LinkedIn and say, you know, I worked with you in 1985 and I remember this or that. And so there was wisdom all the way through that I appreciate now in a way that I didn't before. So it wasn't like I was really broken and now I found a new thing to fix me. It was like, oh no, it was all perfect.
Lorna, can you remember the first big insight that you had where that really sunk in for you in your life and you saw it for what it was? That it was just thought and it really started to change you from the inside?
I don't remember the first one, Kate, because I don't, for whatever reason, but I will tell you one that transformed everything. So I had started to see that I had started to see that thinking, I had started to see that my experience was created by my thinking in the moment from the inside out. But like everybody at the beginning of this journey, I had exceptions. I kind of understood that for like 80% of my life. But then I had things that looked much more real to me. And one of the things that looks very real to me is my dog, Stir Fry. So my dog is, I found him when I lived in China, and I love this dog beyond love. You know, I just adore this dog. And he was always an exception. And Stir Fry hurt his leg last year, which ironically happened the day after my mother died. And somehow Stir Fry hurting his leg occurred to me as more important than my mother dying, which is interesting in itself when I tell you the insight. I went through a couple of weeks of complete agony, trying to work out, note the word, work out, what to do about Stir Fry's leg. I had vets telling me he needed surgery. I had vets telling me he didn't need surgery. I had people telling me he needed injections. I had other people telling me that he was old and he was always going to be limping because he was old. And I think it's fair to say that I had a couple of weeks of on and off an enormous discomfort, characterized by all the things that I now see as discomfort, as overthinking. My body was, uncomfortable. My thinking was super muddled. I was really a combination of crying and angry, irritable. My mood was just terrible. And I felt incredibly alone, like really separate. And I've come to see this as a sign that I'm off. But I didn't see myself as off at that time. I just thought that I had a real problem about what to do with my dog. And I was walking across town to get another vet to see him. And I will never forget this moment as long as I live. I was between Fifth Avenue and Madison Avenue, and many people listening know where I was, on 75th Street. And I suddenly saw that the entire context that I had created was that I had to get this right. That I could possibly make a mistake. And if I made a mistake, that would be the end of the world. And so getting it right was my only mission. And in that moment, I saw, first of all, I saw like in hyperspeed that I didn't even know what right was. I had made up right. And I was then going to apparently judge myself against right. And it was all made up. And it was like a glass bowl, like a vase. And it was as if it shattered, like I dropped it and it shattered in front of me. And I realized that this container of getting it right was a container that I was using not only for him, but for everything. So much, not everything, but so much in my life, that I had made up a game, a completely, endlessly changing game of what right was and what not right was. And that the very best that I could hope for in this game of getting it right or not getting it right was some short-term relief that this time I had managed to dodge a metaphorical bullet and get it right, only to be really aware that in the next moment I was going to make up another game that I was going to have to get right. And as I speak it to you now, that entire awareness happened in seconds. Like it just fell apart in front of my eyes. And I felt really emotional. And then I started laughing, because it was so ludicrous now that I'd seen it. And then after that, some sort of mini insights happened, kind of like a aftershock of an earthquake, maybe. So I kind of saw that with this creature that was my most solid, this dog. And then I saw how that was a very familiar shape of thinking with which I approached things. And now I see my clients doing some version of this. I catch myself doing it, and I know that I'm doing it because I feel bad. I think my thinking gets muddled. I feel sick. I feel separate. And coming back to the question of my mother dying, what was interesting for me in retrospect was that, of course, I couldn't do anything about my mother dying. So it didn't suck me in like my dog's leg sucked me in, because the thinking story that was so solid was about action. And once things were already behind me, There was nothing to be done about that then. So now we needed to move on to the next thing that we needed to do something about. And so my orientation has always been future, future, future. Now, as I settle into this thinking, I'm like, oh, okay. And I found even my body has changed a bit, like I used to lean in, like, because I was always looking for something to fix, because I had decided that there was something that I always needed to get right. And now I kind of just sit differently in the world.
Wow.
I love that. When you realize there's nothing to do.
And what's so interesting, Kate, there's nothing to do, but so much gets done. This is also one of those counterintuitive things that just before this call, as I was walking back from the living room with my charger, the thought occurred to me that I needed to do something about a tax thing. Just kind of drifted up into my consciousness. And it just felt like, this is the time. I wandered over to my computer. I calmly sent an email. The timing is completely perfect. I got a response within 5 minutes, and all needs to be done. Now all that needs to be done will be done. That thing would have been on a to-do list that I would have written down and held myself to account for. Yeah, and things got done, but it's exhausting. Whereas now, things just get done. They just happen. I was watching Tiger Woods' documentary. There's a new documentary on Tiger Woods, and I was watching him, hit the ball. The power and precision of the way that he hits the golf ball, just breathtaking. And it looks so slow. Like, it doesn't look fast, but it's super fast, right? Because he's in flow. And that's how it sort of occurs to me now. Yeah, it's amazing.
Every time you and I talk, Lorna, which I'm grateful for, on average twice a month right now, and we have our usual kind of catch up before we go anywhere deep. Not that we always go anywhere deep, but in the kind of the catch up, it always amazes me, going back to the point that you made about getting things done, how much you do and how little thinking you've got about that compared to a handful of years ago. I'd love for you to share what you're up to in the world right now.
Yeah.
Because I think you're up to some really cool things.
This is such a great question, Win, because not only do I get a lot done, but it just gets done differently. So this morning at 8 o'clock in the morning, I had a call with a very big organization that both of you know and all of the listeners know. And one person was in Singapore and one person was in New York and me. And the reason why I was on this call was I did a TED talk on collaborative leadership, which had, 2 million something views. TED Talks are very popular and fashionable. And so people watch TED Talks and they go, oh, I think I like what she's got to say. So lots of people come to me through that. And the second is that I'm a global ambassador for the B Corporation movement, which is a group of companies that are certified as being the highest in environmental and social performance. And there are about 4,500 of them in the world, including many companies that people admire, like Patagonia, Natura, Athleta. And so I talk to big companies about transforming their businesses from just caring about money to caring about the planet and the people on it. And so this conversation was designed to prepare me for a keynote speech that I was to give to this big company about ESG, environmental, social, and governance, which is kind of the acronym that's often used in this space. And in the old days, I would have prepared for that meeting. I would have had a little story, would have done my research on who these two people were, and I would have been ready to kind of persuade them of my opinion about how businesses should work. And that's cool. I was good at that, and people were impressed, and But today, I walked my beloved dog, whose leg is fine, by the way, if anybody cares. And of course you all care. He's real. And he didn't have the surgery as well, just in case you're wondering. And I made a cup of coffee and I sat down in my chair 2 minutes before the call, and I settled myself down. And I thought to myself, I fleetingly thought, I wonder if I should have prepared more. But then I thought, I wonder who's going to turn up on the screen. I wonder who these people are. It's going to be fun. I was curious. So they turned up, and there was a little bit of that thing that happens at the beginning. People are like imagining they should say something. And anyway, I just sat there, and then one of them spoke, and then the other one spoke. And I really, really, really listened to what they said. And then we had a conversation about life and flow and what makes a great business and how humans really work, and about kids. Because one of the metaphors that occurred to me is one that I've learned from Michael and I use many times, which is that humans are designed to operate real time and humans are designed to experiment. And I use the metaphor of learning to walk, because often big businesses have this idea that they're supposed to have a strategy that they're supposed to get right from the top of the company, and then they're supposed to deploy it. And I made the point that that's kind of like a little kid sitting on his or her butt, designing a strategy to get the cookie and not leaving their mat until they have designed the plan, which they will now flawlessly execute as they walk across the living room and dodge the coffee table and the chair to get the cookie. Of course, they started laughing. We then landed up in a conversation about how natural that is. And the feeling was like this feeling. There was a kind of a common human shared experience, which I don't think they expected. And I didn't know what to expect, so, And we left it with them saying, they asked me, so what do you do exactly? And I said, I just do whatever I like, really. I mean, if it makes sense to me to do something, I say yes, and if it doesn't, I don't. And I said, well, I can tell you that I do not do set piece, pre-organized speeches to big groups of human beings with one-way transmission. I won't do that. But if I can speak to the people that you want me to engage with before, we can, something will emerge. All I can tell you is that the next steps will emerge for us. Now, I'm pretty sure that something will happen between me and them, and that the size of that organization and their reach means that there will be big impact. I don't know exactly what form that will take. I don't know my role in that. I don't know if anybody will give me money for it. But I know something will happen. So increasingly, I'm playing with that way of being. For example, I had a lot of thinking about money, like how much should I charge and all that. And I was coaching a client this week. She had reached out to me and asked me if I would help her. Bless her, I asked her, what would a miracle be? And she said something like, I would like to feel less stressed and hopeless about my job. That would be a miracle. And I thought, oh my gosh, bless, that's a miracle? I think we can do better than that, I said to myself. So we set up 2 days, 2 half days. And then at the end, and when she started to see some of this, she said, I just can't believe how amazing I feel. And then she said, so I'm worried about money, what should I pay you? And it just occurred to me in the moment to say, we spent 2 days discussing that we live in the experience of our thinking in the moment. Even though some things look real, one of those things is money. Looks real. It isn't made up. So how about between now and when we next talk, you apply some of these principles that we've talked about to the subject of money and see what makes sense to you. And as it came out of my mouth, I thought, oh, that's cool. I like that. And now next week she'll come to me and she'll say something. I don't know what she'll say. And then whatever she'll say, I'll say something else. And I don't know what that'll be. And so this is fascinating because, of course, to me, money used to mean that I mattered. And it doesn't mean that anymore. So yeah, that's what I'm up to in the world. And I'm exploring how this understanding can help to transform people's experience. And because my history is in big businesses and because I have credibility in my history, it's interesting that my curriculum vitae is apparently important. My history gets me in the door. And then we can have whatever conversation emerges. Like today, they did not call me up to have this conversation. They called me up to have another conversation, but this is the conversation that we apparently are having. And so I think that that's what's going to unfold even more strongly. I'm also on 4 boards, and that's also interesting because it's another way into seeing how groups of people who are engaged in big, important dilemmas of, big, important, seems important, but big things, how they work together. So, yeah, that's what I'm up to.
Before we had this conversation today, Kate and I, we thought about, well, what would we love to know about what Lorna's up to? And one of the summary answers that you sent us a few days ago were 3 words: peace, love, and laughter. And it's been evident to me how those 3 words have been behind everything that you shared today, including what you shared about that call you had this morning at 8 a.m. Eastern time, and the way that you operate with one-to-one clients and on the 4 companies you're on the board with, as well as with Stir Fry and with your partner, and in the way that you show up. Peace, love, and laughter. I just think that those are just three gorgeous words of a way of being. Thank you, Lorna.
Thank you.
Thank you, Lauren.
So if there's a way of getting in touch with Lorna, we'll put the details will be available either below this if you're looking on YouTube, or also below the description of this podcast episode of how to get a hold of Lorna and also see her TED Talk.
Thank you so much, both of you.
Thank you very much, and we'll speak to you all very soon.
Thanks for joining us. We'd love for you to subscribe, rate, and review. If you have a topic or question that you'd like us to chat about, email Win or Kate at win@winning.co.uk and Kate at katerobertscoaching.com. Until then, enjoy what's possible under the noise.